Today, Nolly Elementary would like to recognize all of our April Leaders of the Month. We are so proud of these students for their outstanding leadership in the classroom, playground, lunchroom, and they are always displaying the 7 habits here at Nolly School. Today, I will recognize each student in each grade level and tell you a little something about them. Okay, starting off in kindergarten in Mrs. Craig's room, we have Lincoln Smith, who is proactive, thinks win-win, and seeks first to understand. Mrs. Craig said Lincoln has an old soul with wisdom for his young age. She said, I look at him as the truth seeker and reasoner in class. Our classroom has many little leaders by principle, and Lincoln is certainly one of them. Thank you, Lincoln. We are so proud of you. In Mrs. Parton's room, we have Ava Dean, who is proactive. Ava is such a joy to teach. She is positive, helpful, organized, and kind. She is proactive by having her materials ready and completing her work in a timely manner. Way to go, Ava. In Mrs. Rankin's room, we have Cora Rich, who is proactive. Cora aims to please. She works hard, and it shows. She's beginning to show leadership and to model for others of what is expected. Mrs. Rankin said, I am so proud of your due diligence and always doing what's best for yourself. Congratulations, Cora. In Mrs. Zukowski's room, we have Bethany Hicks, who begins with the end in mind. Mrs. Zukowski said Bethany has made learning to read a goal of hers. She has been practicing CBC words, sight words, and book reading. Her efforts have helped her reach her goal of becoming a better reader. Way to go, Bethany. Keep setting your goals. Okay, now for our first graders. In Mrs. Beard's room, we have Everly Yoakum, who puts first things first. Everly does a fantastic job of getting her work done and always trying her best. She participates in class, is kind and helpful to others, and is also responsible. Way to go, Everly. In Mrs. Bowser's room, we have Dean Coker, who demonstrates all of the habits. Mrs. Bowser said Dean is a very cooperative and well-mannered first grader who accepts responsibility beautifully. You can always depend on Dean to set a good example in citizenship as well as scholarship. It is a pleasure having Dean in class. In Mrs. Fiesler's room, we have Maddie Hartman, who is proactive. Maddie has come a long way with her growth mindset and hardworking ways. There were times when something was hard and she wanted to quit, but now she just keeps her head high and remembers the power of yet. Way to go, Maddie. In Mrs. Rector's room, we have Avery Schaffner, who is proactive, puts first things first, and synergizes. Avery is a quiet leader. She works hard and is a kind friend. Mrs. Rector said, I can always count on Avery to do the right thing. Way to go, Avery. All right, now for our second graders. Our first student was nominated by Mrs. Behrens, and it is Julius Moore, who is proactive. Julius has worked so hard this year to improve both academically and behaviorally. He makes sure he is making good choices every day. Keep up the great work, Julius. In Mrs. Grandin's room, we have Casey Hartman, who puts first things first. Casey works hard each and every day. Mrs. Grandin said, I always appreciate her big heart and big effort with putting what is most important first. Way to go, Casey. In Mrs. Slimak's room, we have Rocco Slutz. Mrs. Slimak said, Rocco has worked very hard this year to overcome obstacles and push ahead. He has made huge improvements on putting first things first and completing his work. Mrs. Slimak said, I am so proud of you. In Mrs. Truax's room, we have Olivia Varner. Mrs. Truax said Olivia is encouraging, positive, hardworking, and responsible. She makes good decisions even when no one is looking and enjoys helping others when they are struggling. Keep up the great work in second grade, Olivia. And in Mrs. Van Dorsten's room, we have Casey Golke, who puts first things first and synergizes. Mrs. Van Dorsten said, I am very proud of Casey's hard work in making sure all of her assignments are turned in. She is also helpful and friendly to all of her classmates. Way to go, Casey. All right, now for third grade leaders. Our first student is Dexter Lysick in Mrs. Braley's room. Dexter is proactive, begins with the end in mind, and thinks win-win. Mrs. Braley said Dexter aims to please. He is such a hard worker and he strives to do his best always. However, sometimes he can get frustrated if he makes a mistake. He has been working hard to breathe, and realize everyone makes mistakes. We are so proud of him for using coping skills and remembering we learn through our mistakes. Keep up all of your hard work, Dexter. In Mrs. Esterly's room, we have Kinley Garrison, who is proactive. Kinley is proactive by staying in at recess every day to practice math facts. She has an extremely positive attitude about school. Stay positive, Kinley. We love this about you. In Mrs. Stasnis's room, we have Colton Zimmer, who is proactive. Mrs. Stasnis said Colton Zimmer is seeing the results of his proactive choices in 3rd grade. He has stayed in at recess to earn his way to the bowling party. Every single day he asks for help or to do a job, and whenever he has spare time, he asks to do more iReady lessons to earn another square on his lessons pass chart. Keep up all this hard work, Colton. We are proud of you. And in Mr. Straub's room, we have Timmy Strickland, who puts first things first. Timmy is such a great leader. He is very good at getting a job done. He works hard and is careful and willing to try new things. He is receptive to making corrections and fixing his mistakes. What a great growth mindset Timmy has. Way to go. All right, now finally our 4th graders. Our first student was nominated by Mrs. Gardner and Mrs. Hansel. It is Sloan Steiner, who is proactive. Sloan is such a proactive learner in 4th grade. She's always prepared and responsible. She sets goals and works hard to achieve them. Keep up the great work, Sloan. We are very proud of you. In Mrs. Matson's room, we have Ella Bailey, who begins with the end in mind. Ella has really become a leader this year. She's been working hard and making a goal to get on challenge for spelling. She's showing initiative that will take her far. Keep it up, Ella. In Mrs. Oak's room, we have Paisley Fanning, who is proactive. Paisley is a great leader with a can-do attitude. She usually does the right thing at the right time. If she ever breaks a rule, she always apologizes and accepts the consequences without excuses. We are very proud of you, Paisley. Great job. And in Mrs. Toast's room, we have Gianni Prinzo, who is proactive. Gianni is a responsible 4th grader. He has a can-do attitude and always tries his best. Gianni also is always pleasant and positive with everyone. Thank you, Gianni, for the nice smile every day. Congratulations to all of the NOLI Leaders of the Month. The entire staff here at NOLI is so proud of you. Please keep up the great work and your outstanding leadership. Way to go!